Hey, what's up? It's UP Power with Keegan Cooper and Kevin McNulty. We are happy to be back after a long week at the Superior Dome in Marquette, all around at Advantage for the Skills Challenge. Of course, we're talking about UP Football All-Star Week, the 17th annual UP All-Star Game in the books. It was a lot of fun, Keegan. 49-25 on game day when we got out there on Saturday. It was the Red team, of course, coached by Chad Brandt and a lot of his Menominee staff. Head coach of Iron Mountain, Robin Martela, on that staff as well. Team Red takes down Team Black, and it was a real all-star game. We saw some of the stars from the field last fall really ball out in this one, and, the Team Red offensive MVP, Trevor Turkoff, a guy who took Menominee all the way to Ford Field in November. That was pretty much what I expected, but I'm glad Turkoff and a lot of his Maroons teammates had that moment in the All-Star game too.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the whole week as a whole, all of them already all-stars, but watching them work together, you take a group of athletes that are all-stars, you give them 1 week to, learn a new system, put it together, play with guys that they've never played, and then lead up to the game on Saturday. And it was great from both sides to see how it kind of all came together. Team Red takes the victory. Trevor, we saw him throw, long touchdown passes for Menominee in the fall, and he came out and showed up there. I mean, opening the scoring, that pass to Wyatt Dimmers, we saw that pass when he threw it to his brother down at Ford Field. So just a great week entirely for these athletes to get out there and experience it. Team Red gets to take the bragging rights with them for the win, but we'll have to see what happens next year.
We got confirmation from Chad Brandt that was indeed the toss to Demers all the way down the field, of course, from Manistee, a really talented multi-sport athlete for the Emeralds. Glad he got that reception because he deserved the moment. The Emeralds didn't go that deep in the state tournament last year. So DeMars on the reception, that time 73 yards. I'm pretty sure Mark and I were calling it that on the broadcast. But, yeah, that was indeed the play that we saw from Turkoff to Turkoff at Ford Field. So Menominee put in a lot of their offense. My favorite play of the day, of course, there were a lot of memorable ones, but out there, Team Red, it was when Danny Marcotte of Lakeland and Hubble was in the game. He throws it in the flat to Alex Ortman, a guy we talked about a lot on this podcast over the past couple of weeks because of his time with Norway baseball going to the state championship. Well, Alex Ortman still rocking the bleach blonde hair, catches in the flat, right back to Landon Bardowski, who, when he puts his head down, you don't want to stand in front of him. He'll be going on to play his college ball at UW Oshkosh. Bardowski down to the 1 yard line, didn't quite get it in, but next play, Bardowski's in the end zone. And, Team Red kind of loaded on offense, especially in the backfield. Turkoff, your quarterback, going to be back in the shotgun. Either Bardowski or Kyla Carr joining him back there. Kyla Carr won the character award for Team Red. Could have been the MVP, maybe if he got more touches, more carries on Saturday. But he gets a touchdown as well. And on top of that, he knocks in all 7 extra points. I reminded Mark on the broadcast, he was a weapon for Negaunee last year when a lot of teams really had to go for 2 because they didn't have someone who could consistently make extra points. That wasn't the case for the Miners. LaCar was money throughout the season, and we saw it on Saturday. That could have been a huge difference in the game because Ben Johnson had a great game. Kicking the extra points wasn't his strength on Saturday. Yeah. He missed all of his until the final touchdown. He got one in. Crowd cheered for him. It was like, way to go, Ben. 2-point conversions in the All-Star game, not an option. Yeah. So Team Black was at a little bit of a disadvantage there because they didn't have a guy like LaCar who could knock him through that easily. But Kyla Carr, a lot of fun to talk to. And we mentioned it. You did an entire story on it that Turkoff, LaCar, among others, going on to play at NMU. They got their first taste of the Dome, and for the guys on Team Red, it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think that for young athletes going and having that experience of, hey, this is where I'm going to play college football, I think for them just memorable, and also kind of that experience of what is it like to be in this Superior Dome and play a football game and be under those lights and go through that wave of emotions. Now, obviously, Team Red kind of came out on top, so they're feeling good after their first game played in the Superior Dome. I think it's just a great week. We talk about Ben Johnson. I mean, the play that he had,
Pick six?
Pick six all the way to
Best
the house.
defensive play of the entire game,
Yeah.
without a doubt. And as a result, he wins defensive MVP.
Yeah.
I was going into the week expecting to see Johnson running the ball a lot because he carried the Eskimos' offense in the fall, largely because of what he could do on the ground. Well, no, he said to me middle of the week when I caught up with him, I'm playing defense. I'm like, all right, we got to see a big hit because Ben Johnson's built.
Ben Johnson is built,
And it wasn't necessarily a big hit that made the highlights. It was the pick six. That was an incredible play.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, right when Danny Marquette came in the game, but he definitely responded well, helping out Team Red there in the second half quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think that just goes to show kind of the level that, these athletes are able to go to. Ben Johnson was a running back for Escanaba, but comes into All-Star Week and, said, hey, you're going to play defense, takes on that role, does a great job doing it, and then, gets rewarded during the game with that pick six to the house. So that just, I think to me, the level of that game and the level of athletes that, we got to see and the community got to see on Saturday just goes to show where UP football has grown and how, good some of these athletes are, which makes me excited for fall football season when these guys get into college to see what they do.
And beyond that, we talked to Ben again about this after the game, that these guys playing in the game this past weekend grew up watching this game. I mean, they're 18 years old. It's been going for 17 years. So they know that the best high school football players in the UP go to play in this game. They're so grateful that they had the opportunity to do it. And on top of that, you and I spent extended amount of time talking to Mason Cooley after the game, who's the defensive coordinator for Menominee. And I think he was a little surprised coming into the week when so many of these guys were willing to do what it took to win.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about, oh, no, I need to be getting all the targets if I'm a wide receiver. I need to be playing wide receiver. I played that in the fall, so I need to be doing that on this team. No, there were a lot of guys that said, put me where you think I'm going to help us win, which is really exciting. You think of all-star games in pro sports, they don't mean a lot.
Yeah.
Especially the NBA All-Star Game. The Pro Bowl is not what it was in the NFL. Even the MLB All-Star Game, there's not much at stake. It's fun, and it's hard to change how you play baseball in an All-Star Game. But this game, over the course of the week, we saw how these teams were trying to get a little crafty, trying to get a leg up on the opposite sideline as well. And, well, Team Red just did it a little bit better in the end, a 24-point win. The other thing I wanted to mention, catching up with Coach Brandt before the game on Friday, he said the style of practices during All-Star Week were a little bit different than what you're used to in the season, and you'd expect that. He told me a lot of install and a lot of scheme work, because those are the things that you don't want to screw up because they result in mistakes. They screwed up, one, and it resulted in a pick six for Team Black. So a lot of install and scheme throughout the week. They had 2-a-day practices most days last week, and Coach Brandt told me even during the postseason last year with Menominee, they're still working on a lot of individual skill work and things of that nature. You don't need to do that when you have all-stars.
Yeah,
you have the best players in the UP.
Yeah, they come in and they know their skill set is here, so now it's what do we have to do and get crafty. And we saw some of those plays, some of those trick plays and some of those things. We saw Eli Rouse for Team Black throw a touchdown.
Yeah, that was fun.
Not what you expect, right? You expect Eli to get the ball and, run 60, 70 yards for a touchdown. But that was another crafty play. And I think that was just exciting to watch, that, hey, they're able to do some things that you're not normally going to see in, let's say, a regular season high school football game. Because they're all stars and they see how it works and they see how the play is supposed to develop, and you saw that on Saturday, which was cool too. I think it's also cool. It heightened every day throughout the week, right? Day one they were excited to be there, and they were oh, it's fun to get everybody, know everybody, you hear everybody's name. But you get to Wednesday and Thursday and they're like, oh, this is like Saturday is it's game time. And then even being down there on the sidelines, shooting the game on Saturday, they were focused in. They were locked in.
For sure.
Both sides of, hey, what do we got to do? What's the next play? What's going on? And that was exciting to see that, like, it got really competitive there on Saturday.
Big-time competitors on both sides. The other thing about Team Red and their defense, we came into the game thinking Elizen Rouse, if he gets going like he did during the regular season, man, that's going to be tough to stop. To their credit, they really set the tone that first drive. Team Black, led by Nate Young, Gladstone's quarterback, led the drive all the way down. There was a pass interference call, resulted in a first down inside the 5-yard line. And Team Red's defense comes up with the stand. Caden Lujan of the Sioux, he's your defensive MVP for the Red team, and he deserved it, that sack that he had on Nate Young on 4th down. Like I said, set the tone for the rest of the game. Now, Team Black was able to get it going a little bit, but it was never quite what the Red All-Stars had going on offense, and it started on that first drive when they make that stand, and then it results going the other way. Turcoff to Demers, 73 yards to the house, and special teams. I mentioned the extra points, but that was important too when the Red All-Stars dove on that kickoff. Very next play, Turcoff to Johnny Ingles, Mr. UP basketball, who's just showing he's one of the best athletes in the entire state. We found that out when he was the D4 Player of the Year in basketball. But it was confirmed. He had 2 touchdowns for the Red All-Stars. I don't think a lot of people were expecting that. Johnny Ingles, his 3 weeks in a row of All-Star games has come to an end. It ended on the football field. I mentioned he played in the Border Bash. He played in the UP All-Star Classic for basketball. Only scored 48 points in that game. And then he followed it up with 2 touchdowns at the Dome on Saturday in what will be his final high school football game. And that's, of course, another theme of the entire week. Most of these guys won't put on the pads, won't put on the helmet again. And it was good to see the joy that they had for most of them doing it for the final time.
Yeah, no, doing it for the final time and getting to play against those guys that there's always going to be that sense of competitiveness. But when you are recognized as one of the best football players in the UP, to have that opportunity, the relationships, and we heard, Kyla Carr and Trevor and Ben Johnson and a lot of these other guys talk about it throughout the week. You hear these guys' names for 4 years, you play against them for 4 years, and now you get to come together for a week and finally meet them and build those relationships. There's a handful of players that will play at the next level together in Northern Michigan at Michigan Tech. So to see them go on and be Wildcats and go on and be Huskies, and those relationships really started, at the UP All-Star game, because for the last 4 years, they weren't, necessarily, maybe they were friends, but they were competitors.
Or knew of each other.
Yeah. So for a week for them to get to know each other, excited to see, those guys that are going on that we'll, cover with Michigan Tech and Northern Michigan and see what they do. It's just a surreal week. I had a guy reach out to me on Twitter. He's coming from Florida to play football at Northern Michigan.
Yeah.
He said, man, I wish we had something like this.
I saw that,
to get the, jerseys and meet the guys and, live in the dorms with each other for a week. And that just goes to show how special the UP All-Star game is here in the UP.
Well, I think high school sports in the UP as a whole, because, we know very well when you go downstate deep in the postseason, you're playing the teams from Lower Michigan. Name of this podcast, UP Power. It reigns true because there's a chip on your shoulder, and for the most part, during the regular season, whether it's football, basketball, volleyball, it's very insular, meaning UP team against UP team for almost the entire regular season until you get deep into the state playoffs in most sports. So these guys, like you said, know of each other. They had the chance to come together and maybe be on the same side or go against, guys they went against in the fall for one more time. The other thing I want to mention about Michigan Tech, 8 of those players that we saw on Saturday will be playing for the Huskies. The number was 5 for NMU. Matthew Kolovecki, one of them, along with Ben Johnson, who we've talked about. Matthew Kolovecki was named the offensive MVP for Team Black. It seemed like he was getting a target on every play.
Yeah.
And you can't blame the Black All-Stars offense for going to that guy. Kolovecki has a little bit of height. He's 6'1", 6'2", and can go up and get it. He did that quite a few times. Double-digit catches in an All-Star game. That was darn impressive from Kolovecki.
No, it was, and what I loved from him is that was a whole game. That was all 4 quarters. The last drive for Team Black.
Very last play of the game, he made another catch.
He made another catch. And that goes to show, just the effort level that was put into the game from, Matthew, but also as a collective from both teams. It wasn't, like we talked about professional all-star games where it's, in the NBA they don't really play defense. The baseball game happens, but doesn't happen. The Pro Bowl happens, but it's not go out there and, these guys were competitive.
Play a game of football.
Yeah, these guys were competitive from the first, whistle to the last whistle, and that was exciting to see, this level of athletes and knowing that, hey, some of them, are going on to the next level and we get to see what they do.
The other thing that Coach Branshaw did really well, of course we had him on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, was bring in the guys like Jake Witt, who played in this game once upon a time, and of course is now trying to make his way through the NFL. I caught up with Jake on the sidelines. Of course, he couldn't be a nicer guy. But he was there for most of the week, headed back down to Indianapolis around the end of July to report for camp. So we're all obviously cheering for him. But on top of that, Nick Baumgartner, guy who's won a gold medal in snowboarding, is talking to these guys all week and sharing some of his knowledge and what he's learned coming up through the UP, just like he did. And also one day last week, Joe Osman of St. Ignace, who played college football at Central, went undrafted, but then went on to play 3 or 4 years with the Philadelphia Eagles. Just a great athlete, a great wrestler once upon a time, but we even played that at halftime. He had a fantastic message to the group about why it's unique to play in this game. And we saw that throughout the week, that these guys were having so much fun. Think back to the skills challenge. Vinny Howes of Gladstone did a great job on the line. Of course, we're not talking as much about the guys who were on the line during the game just because, they weren't making catches, making throws, but they all did a great job and bought into what each coaching staff had to say. Vinny Howes, 35 reps, 225 on the bench.
It's impressive.
That
really
was
impressive.
unreal.
And when you watch it, right, he's just boom, boom, like nothing.
Slows down as you'd expect towards the end, but
the first 20.
But 35.
Yeah, whew, that was exciting to see, and all the other guys around him too cheering him on, and that went for the entire skills challenge for all the events. So that I just I go back and watch that, and I'm just like, wow, that's impressive.
And maybe the best thing about, being through All-Star Week officially now in the last week of June here, we have less than 10 weeks before the high school football season gets underway. So it is going to be here before we know it. We are certainly looking forward to it. You and I will be back at that desk August 30th for Friday Night Fever. It's going to be tons of fun to see the next wave of UP football players come through. It's coming up quick. For the next 7-8 weeks, we'll have a little bit more downtime, but this week we are expecting NMU hockey to name a new head coach, and you and I don't need to speculate too much about who it's going to be. We're going to know here pretty shortly. We know the list is down to 3 candidates as of late last week. So Rick Comley, the athletic director at Northern, along with his search committee, a ton of recognizable names on there helping out Comley, who's going to make the decision ultimately and get approval from the president of the university, Brock Tessman. On that search committee, Doug Garrow, who we know from covering Marquette hockey, is their coach, played at NMU. Lindsey Makerzak, who's built a really strong lacrosse program at Northern over the past couple of years. So they are making headway, and we do expect by the middle to the end of this week to know who it's going to be. And then comes, what's your roster going to look like?
Yeah, the big task, right?
And that'll be a lot of the questions when we meet with the new head coach. What's your plan here? Because I keep saying about the situation at Northern, it's very circumstantial. When a lot of people from the outside looking in were freaking out for lack of a better term, at the end of the season when 14 players entered the transfer portal.
Yeah.
That was very circumstantial. The circumstances were it's a large freshman class, a very talented freshman class that might be coming to Northern to steal a little bit of playing time. The other reality that has faced CCHA schools is that there are certain players that don't think they're going to get the eyeballs playing in that conference that they want to pursue their professional career. So you had a handful of players making the decision to transfer because of that reason. And in all, it ended up being 14 players, but at the end of it, you were able to sit back and say, okay, it's not the end of Northern hockey as we know it.
Yeah.
It's just going to look different. And that's the case with a lot of college programs year over year. Now in the transfer portal and NIL era, call it the last 3 or 4 years, that has been the reality in college sports. Well, a new circumstance presented itself when Grant Petolny decided maybe college hockey isn't right for me right now. Maybe pro hockey is the decision I want to make at this point in my life. His kids are growing, I think, off to college in the next couple of years. It's, a bit of a transition phase for him. Decided, pro hockey is where I want to be. So he made the decision to step down. We have not heard yet exactly where Petolny will be coaching next year. I have come to believe it will be in the AHL somewhere. But obviously, best of luck to Grant.
Yeah, most definitely.
Over 7 years, had decent success at Northern, and that's what Rick Comley, said at the press conference when they, announced they were launching the search for a new head coach. But that was a new circumstance that presented the players who decided to stay with another tough decision. And for a lot of them, they wanted the continuity of being with the coaches that recruited them.
Yeah.
And of course, Grant's entire staff, Byron Poole, also stepping away, the associate head coach. So none of the guys that recruited them were going to be there. And that's what their decision was based off of. It wasn't really much else because those guys decided to stay right after the season when a bunch of others entered the portal. I talked to one of those players who decided to transfer elsewhere after Petolny stepped down, and he said, I loved NMU. I had nothing against the program or being in Marquette. I loved it. It was great. We had a great group of guys. It was just the coaches that recruited me and coached me for 2 years weren't going to be there anymore, and I wanted something new, a new challenge. And I think people get that.
Yeah, I think you have to understand that, or at least get it a little bit. That hey, I played for this coaching staff for 2 years, and they're not going to be here anymore, and now, that gives me the opportunity to look for something else. Same thing with the guys that were recruited that are going to come, that are coming in. That's really difficult, I think. You come here and
not all of them are going to be coming to Northern anymore. Grant Slukinski was on the team last year. His brother was an incoming freshman. They both decide, well, haven't heard from them, but I assume it was something along the lines of, well, the coaches that wanted us to be there aren't around anymore. And they both end up transferring to Western Michigan, so we'll actually see them at the end of December at the GLI, the Slukinski brothers. But yeah, that's just how it goes. Now, when you have 30 days to make a decision after your coach leaves, a lot of them are going to make the decision to go elsewhere. That's just how it is. And coaches have always had the freedom to leave their job and go to another school. In Grant Petolny's case, he made the decision to leave college hockey and likely end up in pro hockey. So we will stay on top of that at NMU, of course, when they announce the new head coach, and then after that, getting the information on who is going to be on the ice when October rolls around, which it's not a ton of time to build a roster and have a team play in the CCHA next year. So it is really, really interesting how it'll shake out, but we will know a lot more later this week. Let's stick with puck and go to the Stanley Cup. We had an epic Game 7 Monday night in Florida. This series was absolutely wild for obvious reasons because Florida wins the first 3 games And then they stumble. They don't look like the same hockey team over the next 3 games. Games 4, 5, and 6. They got outscored by 10-plus goals during those 3 games.
Yeah.
Well, they come home last night. All of Canada, it seemed like all of the world was rooting for Edmonton because obviously there's no debating that's a better hockey town than South Florida.
Fair.
So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people really resonated with the fans in Edmonton and were thinking, man, they've waited for 34 years since they won a cup.
Yeah.
The country of Canada has waited for 31 years since they've won a cup. It was the Canadians in '93 who last did it. So Game 7, Edmonton trying to win 4 games in a row, and lo and behold, the Florida Panthers from Games 1, 2, and 3 shows up last night. They play their game, and I like the group there in Florida. I understand that, South Florida hockey fans aren't the same as they are in Edmonton or even here in the UP or, in Detroit, Chicago. It's not the same as an Original Six or a Canadian team, but the group there, I really liked what they were able to accomplish over the last 2 years because this franchise hadn't had any success
Yeah.
during its 30-year history. Over the past 2 years, they've won more playoff games, more playoff series than they did in the previous 28 years.
Yeah.
So it's cool what Paul Maurice did, who's a native of Sioux, Ontario, so right over the border from the UP. Paul Maurice, a lifer in coaching, had coached the most games in the NHL without winning a Stanley Cup, and he gets his moment. Watching him with Scott Van Pelt after the game, you don't want to say it's relief because you're so overjoyed in the moment when you get to lift up the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
But for Paul Maurice, who spent his life coaching, came close last year, losing 5 games to the Vegas Golden Knights, the possibility of losing 4 in a row and not getting to hoist the Stanley Cup on your home ice and knowing that more of his coaching days are behind him than are ahead of him, I felt really happy for that guy. And they got it done. They won it fair and square. There was nothing in the game that made you say, oh, the Oilers were cheated out of a cup. No, Sergei Bobrovsky in the third period really was back to who he was. If he didn't have games 4, 5, and 6, where Edmonton was scoring on him willy-nilly, then he probably would have won the Conn Smythe. It was Connor McDavid who wins the Conn Smythe, and maybe that's the next conversation we have. Connor McDavid, when is he going to do it? Because he's such a generational talent. In games 4 and 5, he had 4 points in back-to-back games. And part of the reason why he won the Conn Smythe, from a losing team, only the 6th ever player to do that.
Yeah, not an easy task to do. And credit to, the Oilers. You go down
Absolutely,
3-0.
for sure.
You could have just rolled over and been like, okay, and Florida sweeps in 4. Nobody wants that. Not in the Stanley Cup. Not in playoffs. You don't want a 4-0 sweep. Now it happens in all major sports, all professional sports. Sweeps happen. That's a thing that happens. But credit to the Oilers for making it a series.
Well, it's so easy to turn over and say, well, it was a good
3-0,
run.
Yeah.
That's not what they did. And they were in 31st place in the NHL mid-November. They were 3-9-1, I believe it was. They made the coaching change. Chris Knobloch comes in, and they go on an unbelievable run. But I also have a hunch with Connor McDavid, the best player in hockey. He'll be back. So, you have that, Oilers fans, after what was a really tough loss in Game 7. They scored right away. Each team tied at 1, just about 6.5 minutes into the game. It was Florida on the power play, but it wasn't power play goal when Evan Rodriguez turned around and it was tipped in by Carter Verhaeghe. It was right when the Oilers came back to full strength, so they didn't have their 5 men on the ice when that goal went in. But a beautiful deflection that time by Verhaeghe set the tone, like I said, for Florida in the beginning of the game. Now, Edmonton turns around. That was a beautiful pass from Cody Ceci, all the way across both blue lines, up ahead to Janmark, and a nice finish. Bobrovsky didn't stand a chance on that goal. So we're tied at 1, and then it felt like we were tied at 1
forever
for the next period, next 20 minutes or so. And finally, Florida, I think that was a turning point in the game, really, and what wound up being the winning goal for Florida. That was Sam Reinhart off the play where the puck's just sitting there right by Bobrovsky, and it's scooped out. I forget who that was. Tremendous defensive play.
Yeah.
Well, the Panthers turn around, and the Oilers' defense, if you watch that play back on the Reinhart goal, he's coming up the right side, and forgive my hockey terminology, but he's coming up the right side. The defense of Edmonton sits back.
Yep.
And they have 4 guys. It's 4 guys for Edmonton playing defense and 3 Florida Panthers. It wasn't a breakaway, but Reinhart had such a beautiful look. He got it between the pad and the glove of Stuart Skinner for the game-winning goal. He had such a clear look, and if Edmonton just brought a little bit more,
Brought a little pressure, yeah.
then we would have stayed tied. And then who knows what would have happened, because obviously in the third period we had no scoring. There was that sequence, about 7 minutes left in the game. Time's running out on Edmonton. They're getting really tired. McDavid and company had been on the ice more than they had been all year. Mm-hmm. And, of course, this is game, 90-something of their season.
Yeah, they played a lot.
They played a lot of hockey, and they're out there for what seemed like the entire third period. They're running out of gas. And McDavid has a look right near the net. Sam Hyman has a look right near the net. He kind of whiffed, and Bob just pounced on it, and that was it, really. And then up until the final moments, Oilers emptied the net. You had that stand near the boards, which ended up ending the game, and the fans in Florida go nuts, and you could see it on the faces of the Panthers, like, we really just did it. We almost blew it, but we just did it. We won the Stanley Cup. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was for Florida, right? Because if you, let's say you didn't watch any of the games, right? And you're just hearing about it, you're like, oh, Florida's going to win this in like 4 or 5 games.
That's how it felt.
That's how it felt, right? Especially after the first 3. Oilers do something different, and they get it to a Game 7. Everybody loves a Game 7. I don't think it matters what professional sport it is.
No, it felt like so long since we had one.
Yeah.
In the final game of the year, you know, whether it be the NBA, the MLB, or the NHL. I actually don't know. I'm surprised. I don't know that off the top of my head. When was the last Game 7 in either the World Series, NBA Finals, or Stanley Cup Final? It had been a while. So to have that was really refreshing, because it's just different being on the edge of your seat, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Yeah. Especially when it's a 1-goal game for the entire third period.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I just, you know, I'm trying to think off the top of my head in a recent Game 7, right? I know this isn't right, but the only one I can think of is Miami Heat in San Antonio when Ray Allen hits that 3 in the corner. But
that was a fantastic series. There had definitely been one more recently than that.
Yeah.
2019 Nationals over the Astros, where the road team won all 7 games of that series. I know the Blues won their first Stanley Cup in 19. That was in 7 games. But, yeah, look that up.
Yeah, I'm looking it up.
We need to know Game 7s in World Series, NBA Finals, and Stanley Cup Final. It had been a minute, and that was just a great moment for hockey, because obviously the NBA Finals ended in 5 games, so there was a little break for fans of both sports to really lock into the Oilers-Panthers series. You looked that up. We had a Game 3 last night that I was also locked into. I was back in the newsroom. You weren't around anymore, but I had Stanley Cup in front of me and the College World Series behind me, because that was a great game too. Tennessee and Texas A&M playing for all the marbles. A&M in the best 2 of 3 series on Saturday. They get ahead and get the win. So only one more for the Aggies to win the national championship. Well, Tennessee comes back on Sunday, gets to win in their black uniforms in 95-degree heat in Omaha, and then that set up Monday night, winner-take-all, Game 3, and Tennessee squeaks it out, Keegan. They really just squeaked it out. In the end, now they went up 5-1. 6-1 actually, and it looked like they were going to breeze to it. It was right off the bat in the top of the first, bottom of the first actually. Christian Moore hit a homer into the bullpen in left field. Peyton Manning and Morgan Wallen there cheering on the Volunteers. That was kind of funny. So Tennessee takes the early lead, and then Dylan Dreiling homered in all 3 games of the College World Series. How cool is that? I keep saying I wish I was better at baseball.
I mean, you're playing on the biggest stage in college baseball. Omaha's a great field. You know, Omaha's a great host site. You know, for the College World Series there. Homer in all 3 games.
All 3 games of the College World Series. So that one in the 7th inning made it 5-1. Tennessee into the bullpen in right field. Tennessee's going nuts. We're about to win the College World Series. Well, we didn't think this would be the most consequential play of the game, but it turned out to be, because Tennessee got their 6th run, a double right center field gap, really over the center fielder's head. Coming home, it was a great play at the plate that you just like dream of in a big moment like that. Play at the plate, throw beats Hunter Ensley home, and the throw brings the catcher, to the left of the baseline, and he's got to extend to tag Ensley. Now, like I said, the throw beat him. The throw was there, but he's moving this way. The momentum for the catcher's going this way. Ensley able to escape around him. An incredible slide, slaps home, spikes his helmet. Everyone's going nuts. Now, it's 6-1. You don't think it's that crazy, but 8th inning, A&M scores 2 runs. So now they're down 3 going into the 9th inning, and then they get the ball rolling a little bit. Man on third, it's 6-4. So the tying run's at the plate. Wild pitch, that run scores. Tying run's still at the plate. You got 2 outs. And then they get it done. They just get the strikeout. They get out of there. They dogpile Rocky Top. Their first national championship in program history, surprising to me, following college baseball over the last couple of years, because Tennessee's been so good.
Yeah, and I mean the program that they built, and you
Tony Vitello deserves a lot of credit. I believe coming over from Arkansas for what he's done over the past couple of years. Tennessee also the first #1 overall seed in the College World Series to win the whole thing since 1999, Miami. And that was the first year that they actually seeded teams in the tournament. So I guess the second time ever that the #1 overall seed has won it. I don't know. I was pulling for Tennessee. It's 2 SEC schools. The College World Series, there were 4 ACC teams, 4 SEC teams going to Omaha. Typically how it goes, but it's exciting stuff, and the Volunteers get it done. Rocky Top reaches the mountaintop, as Carl Ravitch put it. I really like that at the end of the game. You said it, both teams, 13 hits.
Yeah.
2 home runs for Tennessee, but they squeaked it out.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what you want. No, it's not Game 7, but it's a Game 3 winner take all. You don't want it to be a blowout. You want that back and forth, and it comes down to really one play of that slide that gives them the 6th run.
And that's the thing. You didn't think it in the moment because it made it 6-1, but A&M and their bats, Jeff Kent's son, Caden Kent, had a terrific College World Series. On top of that, if A&M had Braden Montgomery, who's going to be a top 10 MLB pick, then perhaps it may have been a different series. But the bats that A&M had, you knew they weren't completely out of a game. And, if this game ended up going 10, 11 innings, they could have easily been the ones dogpiling by the end of it. But Tennessee just hunkered down. Aaron Combs with the save there in the end. Yeah. So a great college baseball season. Omaha was tons of fun. That first weekend we had 3 walk-offs in a row to get us going there. So it was fun. I'm a big fan of college baseball. It deserves a little bit more spotlight, as does the NHL, and I'm glad both kind of had their moment last night with 2 incredible games. I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I'm sure they were through the roof for both of those games last night. It was fun to be here and read those highlights last night at 11. Do you have an answer yet?
I have an answer. Okay, so obviously Panthers, Oilers, 2024.
Yeah.
Blues, Bruins, 2019.
So it was the last one. Look at me.
2019.
Look at me.
I've got for NBA, Cavaliers, Warriors in 2016.
So that was the last Game 7 in the NBA Finals. That was a crazy series, obviously, with the Warriors being up 3-1 after winning 73 games in the regular season. They were 73-9.
The second best team ever.
Don't mean a thing without the ring. Fair. 96 Bulls got it done after winning 72. Yeah.
Nationals Astros.
Okay, are you going to give me credit for that? Because off the dome,
I'm going to give you props.
It had been 5 years
yeah.
since we had a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup, World Series, or NBA Finals. So that was sweet.
I was there, right? The next most recent in the NBA was the Heat and the Spurs in 13.
Okay.
There we go.
Well, that's interesting. We need more. World Series this year. Phillies over the Mariners in 7 games.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm banking on it. It's going to be fun.
I love it.
We're going to have a fun month of October when the MLB season wraps up. The other thing going on, Copa Americas, of course the Euros too, but USA.
Yeah, USA.
Beat Bolivia on Sunday. Christian Pulisic with a goal and an assist. Captain America. Got us rolling in the Copas. That was actually at Cowboy Stadium. It was weird seeing a soccer field at Cowboy Stadium. But USA, good start. We're hosting as we're getting ready for the 26th World Cup. Good start. And then coming up, we got Panama. So keep it rolling, boys.
Yeah, and when you look at Team USA, young, very young across the board.
They are. That's why when the World Cup comes here,
they won't be young.
We can make some waves, maybe. We, as in the US of A. You don't really know. I wouldn't expect us to come close to winning it, but
gotta be good on the draw.
Maybe we compete a little bit more than we have in the past. So watching these guys play in the Copa Americas, gives you a little tease to what we might see in 2026 in the World Cup. So good start for the US of A as we get going. 1-0 in our group. Our group is Uruguay, Panama, and Bolivia. Joining us in Group C, mentioned the win over Bolivia. And then coming up on Thursday, that game with Panama, 6 o'clock on Fox UP. You can catch that game. All the coverage of the Copa America tournament, actually in the United States of America, so that makes it a little bit more fun. We'll see if Team USA, Captain America, Pulisic, and company can. It's a great nickname.
It is a great nickname,
isn't it?
And he is.
I think he's the best, I would say, American soccer player on the men's side since Landon Donovan.
Yeah. I don't.
At least in terms of name recognition.
Yeah,
I would say that.
When somebody says his name.
And Pulisic has a better haircut than Landon Donovan. That is for sure. Goodness. See that picture going around?
Yeah, that picture going around on Twitter. Yeah.
I hope he does something about that. The other thing, sports-wise, that's been going on our networks. We talk about soccer airing on Fox. That USA game will be on Fox UP on Thursday night. We've had the U.S. Olympic trials going on NBC and Peacock. Paris is coming up, and a couple of local stories, somewhat local, will be moving on to compete in Paris. We mentioned it was a while back that Peyton Jacobson, who is a wrestler at NMU, is going to Paris. Hope to catch up with him. He should be in Marquette before he heads out to Paris. So NMU athlete will be going to Paris. That's Peyton Jacobson, the Greco-Roman wrestler. And then Michigan State Spartan winning the decathlon at Eugene, Oregon, where they have all the track and field trials. That was really cool to see a guy who started at Michigan for 2 years competing in track and field, transfers to MSU, has a great career there, doesn't compete in the outdoor championships this spring, so he could get ready for Olympic trials. This is the decathlon that I'm talking about, and he wins it. Wow. Pretty impressive. He's a grad student, 23 years old, so he's from Kalamazoo. We'll be going on to Paris, and I loved what he said. He goes, I didn't come to trials just to qualify for the Olympics. I came to win.
Yeah.
So win he did, and we'll see if he can win some more in Paris. That's a Michigan State Spartan. And then in diving on the women's side, Delaney Schnell was actually born in Iron Mountain. So if you hear her name out in Paris, she grew up in Arizona and competed for the diving team at University of Arizona. But yeah, her roots are here in the UP. That's Delaney Schnell. So just a couple of athletes we'll be keeping tabs on, and Olympic trials will keep on going, especially track and field out there. Funny enough, guy I went to high school with by the name of Tom Brady. I am not joking. He goes to the University of Michigan and is a long-distance runner. We'll be out there at Olympic trials later this week, so we're rooting for Tom.
We're rooting for Tom.
Tom Brady wearing the Michigan maize and blue later this week. We'll see if he can get it done. Great guy. Hope he ends up in Paris where he belongs. And yeah, when that gets rolling, we'll have all your coverage on NBC. It's a fun summer of these sports we don't get every year: Copa Americas, the Euros, the Olympics. Then pretty soon we'll be talking about the World Cup and the Olympics coming here to the U.S. And I've never experienced that in my lifetime.
No.
So we were talking about the last time the Olympics was in the United States. That was '96 in Atlanta. I wasn't alive. Last time the World Cup was in the U.S., '94, also not alive. So we get to look forward to that over the next couple of years. But for now, we're just looking forward to the Olympics and the rest of these soccer tournaments, the Euros and the Copa Americas. So fun stuff.
Favorite Olympic event? What do you like to watch?
Swimming.
I
really, that was the one for me, because the first Summer Olympics that I remember watching was Beijing in 2008, Michael Phelps. And Michael Phelps was
dominant.
Unbelievable. The 8 golds in the one tournament. So that's the one for me. Katie Ledecky, also love watching her on the women's side. 2 natives of Maryland. They were around College Park quite a bit when I was at Maryland. Just kind of a coincidence. So I always root for those 2. Of course, Phelps now retired. Katie Ledecky running it back. I will keep my eye on her. What's your favorite event?
Swimming. I do like swimming. I'm definitely a big track and field track guy. I love watching the sprints. I think the hurdles, are just so as fast as these athletes run. Watching that in the Olympics, one of my favorite moments.
We have some dogs on Team USA. Sha'Carri Richardson. Definitely one of them. A great sprinter. Noah Lyles is a guy people talk about a lot. I'm with you there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the clips I watch is, remember Usain Bolt when he is winning?
Yeah.
And he turns around and
was probably Beijing and London that he was going off. Of course, for Jamaica.
Yeah, and he turns around and waves.
That was an unreal time, because it was like, oh my God, the fastest man in the world is named Bolt.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but no, I think those are, and for me, they're quick, right? I think with some of the races for swimming, they're quick too.
Yeah.
So it's down to the wire, and I love I love seeing who wins. And these athletes, they train, for a majority of them non-stop
for many years.
And then to watch them win.
Gymnastics, fun too.
Yeah.
Simone Biles, I think, running it back for the last time this summer. So it'll be fun to watch her compete, and then she'll be on the sidelines watching the Chicago Bears. Her husband, Jonathan Owens, went from the Packers to the Bears this offseason. So she'll be rooting him on after, hopefully, she has a couple more medals. But we will see. That's coming up pretty much the rest of the summer on NBC and Peacock. And I mentioned the Copa Americas. Thursday night, Team USA back in action on Fox UP at 6 p.m. That'll do it for this edition of UP Power. Tons of fun, Keegan, as always. And we'll see you again next week. Hopefully, over the summer, we will have some more guests in to talk it up with us as we move forward through the heat. It's actually hot outside.
It's warm.
I'm digging it.
It's hot outside. I love it.
Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.